All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Gins. We're so glad to be talking today. What is it? It's Wednesday. Wednesday, the 4th day. Already well into the last, not quarter, but last third of the year. And it hasn't been a great year, I don't think. Maybe we'll see what happens in November, right? But I can't imagine we'll feel a lot. Some of you might feel better in November after the election. I'm sure there'll be a lot of joy among the supporters of at least one of there'll be joy among the supporters of one of the two presidential candidates in the duopoly. Personally, neither one, in my opinion, will make things better for us. They'll only make things worse. Unless you're in the billionaire class, unless you're extremely affluent, you have little reason to feel optimistic about either Harris or Trump. That's certainly my opinion. Look, I'll be fine. I get that a lot. Well, you don't understand what it's like for people who are less well off. And of course I don't, but I can look at the policies that these two presidential candidates have pursued, the policies that they support, and I can say those are terrible policies. I don't really think there's really even a good argument that they're not. What it boils down to is, what team are you on? You on Team Kamala? You on Team Trump? Are you Democrat or are you Republican? Not which candidate's policies will be better for me, for my family, for the people I care about, for my nation, for the world. Those are the questions I think you should be answering. Sadly, very few of us are asking those questions. And I think that is a big reason we're where we are. I'm not going to give passes to people. I mean, look, I get the media is incredibly dishonest. I get that we're being manipulated. I get that we're being gaslit consistently. But there have been opportunities. We have had opportunities to elect better people. We certainly did in 2016. And frankly, we do now. Jill Stein is better. She's significantly better than the alternatives. And not only is she better, the alternatives are really, really bad. So we do have an option. The question is whether we will exercise it. History says we won't. It's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. And there's really nothing I can say about that except no, they're just, we've made bad choices as voters. We've consistently made bad choices. Even in 2020, or 2000 rather, it was a terrible choice to elect W. There was a good option. His name was Al Gore. And for whatever reason, many people thought, no, I have to vote for Ralph Nader. It was a terrible mistake. Today, the mistake is going in the other direction. Today, the mistake is believing either duopoly candidate is on your side. Either duopoly candidate will make things better. Let's try very, very hard not to make that mistake, shall we? Evidence that the Biden-Harris administration has been a complete nightmare. Endless war now in Gaza. And it's not just war, or it isn't war, it's genocide. It's a war on the people of Gaza. That's been now expanded. The theater of operations of the Israeli military has gone beyond the killing fields in Gaza to now include the West Bank in earnest. So we see right there in that area the failure of the Harris-Biden administration. Yesterday, and I know, remember, did you forget? Because I sure didn't. Was it 2 weeks ago? Joe Biden and I are working, was it round the clock? Round the clock to secure a ceasefire. How's that going for you? Have you heard? I haven't heard anything more about that ceasefire. I keep hearing there's going to be a ceasefire, but the details just simply never come together, do they? Well, they allowed for a few hours, Israel did. They paused their operations for a few hours to allow some polio healthcare workers to distribute the vaccine, and then they went right back in and started killing. So there was no real let up in the rate of killing. Gaza. 42 more dead yesterday in Gaza. So, you know, you want to vote for that? I don't know what to say. It seems so clear that this is not an administration that you can believe in. If your argument is, well, but what about Trump? Okay. I thought we weren't supposed to engage in whataboutism. I thought we were supposed to say, hey, people are judged on their own merits without reference to others. I always got criticized during the 2016 campaign when I'd say Hillary Clinton's really bad. I can't vote for her for president. And the response was all the time, well, what about Trump? And then when people would bring up Trump and say, well, Trump is so awful, you have to vote for Hillary, I would say, yeah, but Hillary did this and Hillary did that and Hillary the other thing. No, but you're engaging in whataboutism. No whataboutism. Trump is bad, you must vote for Hillary. And now the argument is, Trump is awful, you must vote for Kamala. If I say, no, but Kamala's terrible too on issue after issue, she makes things worse. She and Joe Biden have made things worse. They have made us less safe. The response is invariably, yeah, but what about Trump? What about Trump? I thought we weren't supposed to engage in whataboutism. Apparently, you can engage in whataboutism if you support Kamala Harris for president. If you're a Democrat, you can engage in whataboutism all day long. You just can't do it. You just can't do it if you're if you question the wisdom of voting for either duopoly candidate, then you're not allowed to engage in whataboutism. Then you just have to acknowledge how bad Trump is. Trump is evil. Trump is the devil. Trump is Satan. And therefore, you can't vote. You have to vote against him. You have to vote for the candidate who can beat him. Well, I don't play that game. I vote for people that I think will make things better. And those are the only people I will vote for if you will make things better. I used to say that the duty of a voter is to vote for the most progressive candidate who can win. And I stand by that with the caveat. That's assuming there's a progressive in the race. If there's no progressive, if there's no one who in any way has policies that are going to make things better, then no. then you have kind of a really tough conundrum, right? I mean, I don't know what you do in that case. But I'll tell you what I do is I'm not going to vote to make things worse. I will not vote to make things worse. And that's what I would be doing. That's what you'll be doing if you vote for Kamala Harris. I put the chart, right? Let's see if we can get that up there, just the little quick chart. And I know people think and I'm going to respond. Some of the points, by the way, this is why, despite as bad as Harris is, she gets a lot of, and she does. She's getting progressive support. So I will delve into that. That's what the program today is about. But just so that you understand, she supports a wall, which is devastating for, of course, immigrants, but also for the environment if you care about that. She supports fracking, which is also devastating for the environment. She's all in for Israeli genocide. She's all in for endless war with Russia, which Trump isn't, to his credit. She's made it clear she's going to stand up to Iran, just like Trump has. I won't call her a fascist. Trump's a fascist, but she's I got into it a little bit on Facebook because I said, hey, Trump's the fascist, not Harris. And there were questions. Well, why is Trump a fascist? We're so ensconced in our little silos. We're Team Trump, or we recognize just how awful Kamala Harris is. So we just say to ourselves, well, we have to vote for the alternative. We have to vote for Trump. So Trump can't be that bad. No, he's that bad. He is. He's that bad. He did try to maintain power, to stay in office despite losing. He completely tried to monkey wrench the orderly transfer of power to someone other than himself. That's a fascist. And so you can say, I will not support, in fact, you should say, I won't support Donald Trump because he's a fascist. Lots of other policies too that are awful. But what is the next logical step for many people is, therefore, because Donald Trump is evil, Kamala must not only be not evil, she must be really, really good. No, they're both really bad. If we want things to change, we have to vote for something different. It's not just, so foreign policy, and I brought up Israel, of course, because that's near and dear to my heart. My co-religionists are engaged in a genocide right now. They're engaged in ethnic cleansing right now. They're eradicating a group of people right now. It's awful. It's so evil and wrong that no, you can't vote morally you can't be it's not a moral choice to vote for Kamala Harris. It's an immoral choice to vote for Kamala Harris. But in other areas, also her policies are awful. Remember, we're always going to stand up to Putin. We got to show Putin. So we have shown Putin to the tune of 500,000 casualties now. 500,000 casualties is the conservative estimate. About 100,000 dead, 12,000 civilians, 100,000 dead, 12,000 civilians dead in Ukraine. And it's gotten worse. It's because of the Ukrainian invasion of Russia. Russia's really stepped it up and they're killing in much higher numbers. It's really awful. Putin is a bad guy. We're showing him by giving him the opportunity to just keep killing on and on and on Ukrainians. Obviously, there's a better way to go. Obviously, we should be engaging in negotiations, talks, conversations, discussions, and obviously the Harris-Biden administration has rejected that option. I think a big reason that many progressives don't get this, honestly, I really think is because Trump has been reasonable on this issue, right? So if Trump says we should talk to Russia, if Trump says I don't want more people dying in Ukraine and Russia, then the response is, oh, well then, I guess the best policy is for more people to die in Ukraine and Russia. See how crazy that is? See how you've let Trump, plus the corporate media, plus the military-industrial complex, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Halliburton. Do you see Boeing? Do you see how you've let them gaslight you into supporting a truly evil policy, which is endless proxy war with Russia? Rather than go to the UN, go with India and China to Moscow and say, hey, what is it going to take to stop this? Which is, of course, what the policy should be. But it isn't. That's not the Harris-Biden policy. That won't be the Kamala Harris policy if she's elected. So what's the response? Well, but what about Trump? I can't do that. I just can't do that. Just was checking to make sure I'm live. I'm live. Call me, 240-242-5646, please. I know you're not going to agree with me. Many of you won't. What we do here is provide a viewpoint that you don't get elsewhere. And not only you don't get it, but that's logical. That actually, from my perspective anyway, is pro-people, pro-humane. But if you disagree with me, why? Why am I wrong? Let's discuss it. Let's debate it. I have to give Sam Cedar, someone I almost never give credit. I give him a little credit because he did have on his show a viewpoint that was expressed by, he didn't actually, I don't think he actually had the caller on, but he had his flunky tell him and Emma about someone who said, hey, AOC's wrong. Play the clip from AOC where she bashed Jill Stein, bashed the Green Party. AOC is wrong. AOC is a bad spokesperson. And to Cedars' credit, he entertained that viewpoint. He didn't agree with it, but he entertained it. Give him credit for that. There's your death count as of July. So it's gone up significantly. There have been a lot of deaths since July, but nearly 500,000 killed or wounded on both sides. And 11,000 plus civilians. Probably that's an undercount too. So that's the fruits of the Biden-Harris policy. That is absolutely, there was a chance to have peace. There were peace talks, there were negotiations, and Biden-Harris, in fact, Kamala even bragged about it. She said, hey, I rallied all these people together so we would fight Putin. Well, I guess that's what they're going to do. They're going to fight to the last Ukrainian. Why do many Kamala Harris folks, why do they support Kamala? What is it? What is going on here? Because she's just not progressive, right? We know she's not progressive. So what is and by the way, why do I have I'm sort of irritated by this. I can see myself, I'm speaking, but I had it shouldn't be progressives part 2, didn't I? All right. So let's get into it. Oh man, this ticks me off because I know I had redone that video, put up a different thumbnail, and somehow using the wrong thumbnail for today's video. So this is the right thumbnail. Why? I guess I didn't replace it. I must not have replaced it somehow. I thought for sure I did. Why some progressives are giving Harris a pass. And yet that's not what you're seeing. If you're clicking on YouTube, so gotta figure that one out. But this is the program here. Let me just show one more time. This is the actual thumbnail, and we'll correct this. We'll correct it. I thought it was right on Facebook, but maybe it wasn't. Our policies are terrible. Done a tremendous amount of harm. Let's go to Crystal Ball. She actually has what I consider to be a somewhat interesting take here, and I do want to share it. This is where she's addressing this Bernie to Trump pipeline. Apparently, a few of Bernie Sanders supporters in 2016, including Tulsi Gabbard and I think Naomi Wolf, have announced that they now support Trump. And so the question is, I guess, was RFK Jr.? He might have been a Trump. He might have been a Bernie supporter. So, and now remember, RFK Jr. has endorsed Trump. Now, of course, RFK, he's just I don't know what the right word is. He's a hack. He's a kook too. He's a crank. But Crystal Ball has some interesting thoughts here. Let's go to him.
I want to dwell on that public shaming piece, though, because I think it's important. It gives me an excuse to get back on the more comfortable ground of criticizing liberals. Since the Clinton era, the entire Democratic Party establishment has been dedicated to a project of punching left, deriding anyone who questions the narrow confines of their cramped worldview as a villain. And this project of derision and excommunication got turned up to 11 during the Bernie era. We weren't just people who wanted healthcare. We were toxic Bernie bros, hell-bent on electing Donald Trump or turning the country over.
Let me just stop it there for a sec. So what Ball is saying here is absolutely correct. The Democratic establishment, with tremendous assistance from Democratic rank-and-file voters, from posters on social media and the like, went all in to blame Bernie Sanders for everything and his supporters. Many people really did actually blame Susan Sarandon, right? It was Susan Sarandon's fault somehow that Trump won. Not that the fault is in the Democratic primary voters for saddling us with an unelectable Hillary Clinton. Not that the fault is Hillary Clinton's for running a terrible campaign. Not that it was the fault of Hillary Clinton for keeping emails illegally on a home server. No, it's somehow the fault of Bernie bros who might have said a few things that hurt people's feelings online and Bernie's high-profile supporters. Obviously absurd. It was all designed to insulate the Democratic corporate establishment from any responsibility for its failures. But more importantly than that, it was designed to demonize the anti-corporatist, anti-militarist left. The James Carvilles of the world, the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world get tremendous amount of money, support. The Democratic Party establishment, its leaders, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Hakeem Jeffries, get tremendous amount of money and support from corporatists, from polluters, from warmongers, from militarists, and they have to crush a progressive movement. So they did. I mean, they did everything they could to do that, to demonize progressives, because it was in their financial interest to do that. Not in your interest, in their interest. And Crystal Ball, to her credit, gets that. Unfortunately, she doesn't get it now.
To Vladimir Putin or whatever. At every opportunity, Democratic Party elites trashed us personally, mocked our priorities, undermined our candidates to the point of outright rigging. It's not an excuse for people to abandon their principles to throw in with Trump, but it is highly predictable that this process of scorn and shaming will in fact lead to some folks embracing the side that is there waiting with open arms to praise and uplift them and their conversion story.
All right, so I agree with this. By the way, the fact that the Democratic establishment completely shamed Tulsi Gabbard, The View attacked her, that doesn't excuse supporting Trump, but it does explain it. But what it does do is justify, in fact, it goes beyond justifying, it requires us to support Jill Stein, to support a true progressive who's not part of the Democratic Party, which has demonstrated its corrupt root and branch.
Not to mention, to validate their online battle-hardened worldview that liberals were always and forever the root of all evil. On the contrary, in the new Kamala Harris era, it has taken remarkably...
she's now going to pivot. So she's saying it was in the Hillary party, everything was the fault of Bernie and the progressive wing. It's all their fault. And that's why Tulsi, it's a reason why maybe a Tulsi Gabbard would move to Trump. And Ball, to her credit, is criticizing that worldview. Now she's going to pivot and say, oh, but Kamala's different. That's her whole argument, is Kamala somehow different.
Little extension of the tiniest bit of goodwill to get many disaffected Bernie-type young people and not so young people back on board. I was personally shocked that Kamala picked Tim Walz for VP simply because he was the candidate the left wanted, and typically Democrats make a show of humiliating the left for sport. In addition, after an initially ugly response to pro-Palestinian protesters, Kamala clearly heard the feedback and adjusted her tone to be more compassionate.
All right, it's just... So this is where she's completely off the rails. Okay, Tim Walz wasn't the worst choice that Kamala could have made for vice president. I'll give her, yeah, it's true. He wasn't. He doesn't represent any real break from the corporatism. He has supported some pretty good policies, and I'm glad of that. But there's no embrace of Medicare for all, not even from Tim Walz. Tim Walz gave a special dispensation to the Mayo Clinic to keep operating in Minnesota, despite the fact that it was cutting back. The Mayo Clinic was cutting back on its rural centers, which many Minnesotans depended on for care. But rather than require, say to Mayo Clinic, you got to keep those clinics up. You got to keep those centers open. We need them. He gave them special dispensations. Now, look, we're all corrupt. We all have to, live in this world. But the idea that Tim Walz is some kind of break from the corporate elites is ridiculous. And in the end, she is a relatively young, obviously healthy person. She is not very, very unlikely to die in the next 4 years or the next, presumably, possibly 8 years if she is reelected. So Tim Walz is not in any way like anointed to be the next Democratic president. And if he somehow runs, he'll be have spent a lot of time in her orbit, in the orbit of the neo-lib, neocon establishment that is completely 100% behind Kamala Harris. What, a few bones. Now, Crystal Ball makes a big deal about how she somehow adjusted her tone with respect to the Palestinians. What is she talking about? I'm amazed by that. No Palestinian advocate spoke at the DNC. If Kamala wanted a Palestinian advocate to speak, they would have spoken. The Palestinian death, the dead Gazans, they're just sort of dead. It's not like Israel caused those deaths. The sexual weaponizing of sex crimes is all by Hamas, never by Israel. I don't understand. What is Crystal Ball talking about when she says Kamala adjusted her message? The only thing she said is there are too many deaths. Well, of course there are too many. Anyone can say that. She doesn't say there are too many deaths because the Israeli military is genocidal. That would be meaningful. She doesn't say there are too many deaths, so I'm going to tell Bibi as soon as I take office that no more. None of that. So this is meaningless, what Crystal Ball is saying.
In future interactions. Now, don't mistake what I'm saying here. These gestures are far from enough, but that's kind of my point. As the old saying goes, you'll catch a lot more flies with honey than with vinegar. Kamala is trying the tiniest bit of honey, and judging by the polls and the Democrats that are coming back home, it's actually working like a charm. This monologue.
All right, so cut it off at that point. It is working like a charm, but partly it's working like a charm. Right, her numbers are way up. Partly it's working like a charm because you, Crystal Ball, are flogging her candidacy. You're supporting it. You're accepting the bone that she threw you. You're not holding her accountable. You don't ever mention Jill Stein. You never present alternatives. So that's why. That's one explanation, I suppose, why progressives are supporting her. Some are supporting, and I think Crystal Ball is probably progressive. I'll give her that. She's kind of moved to the center a little bit, but all right. So she just told you that little tiny bit of honey is enough for her. Kyle Klinsky, her husband, gives you a different answer. Let's get into that.
The other day on the show, the Bernie to Trump pipeline, which is not really a phenomenon among regular voters, among regular people, but it certainly is a phenomenon among politicians and activists and high-profile media people. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand.
Well, Jimmy Dore hasn't endorsed, by the way. Jimmy Dore has not endorsed Donald Trump. As far as I know, I've never heard of that. I don't know about Russell Brand. I don't follow him. But Klinsky hates Jimmy Dore, so he's going to go after him. But I want to go play this a little bit more. So let's continue.
RFK Jr., Jimmy Dore, Russell Brand, people like that. You have they're so-called anti-establishment folks, but functionally, yet again, they, through jujitsu move, turns out we're going to suck off Trump all day and act like he's the lesser evil.
So I don't think Jimmy's done that. I'd like to see that video. I didn't do too much research. Obviously, RFK Jr. endorsed Trump because it was in his interest to do so. I mean, he got some promises from Trump that he didn't get from Harris. So I don't think anyone accepts that explanation for, that it's somehow, I don't know what, I mean, RFK Jr. he's a crank. What kind of example is he? There are people who moved, and I think Jimmy's one of them. This goes to the Crystal Ball's point that he's been so scorned and mocked by the many on the Democratic side of the aisle that he felt, well, I'm going to move towards, Republicans. I'm going to go on Tucker Carlson's show because at least he'll listen to me. At least he'll hear me. And of course, Jimmy's been proven right. He's been vindicated in many cases. Most recently, as Brianna Joy Gray pointed out, that AOC is a complete fraud. And he called her out before anybody. He also, by the way, platformed her very early on when she was running against Joe Crowley in the Democratic primary. He gave her a lot of support, and she responded by abandoning completely the progressive movement.
And then I haven't even gotten into the audience capture is such a fucking problem in this space.
So this is what he curses all. I don't get why this guy's popular. I totally don't understand it. It pisses me off. I'm certainly envious of his numbers. He talks about audience capture. This is a big issue. It's true. What hosts do over and over. I don't do it. I think this probably hurts me as a host. By the way, please call. I see there are people watching 240-242-5646. Most hosts really do try, I think, to tell their audience what their audience wants to hear. I don't do that. I never do that. I tell you what I believe is most important. And I'm trying to build a movement that will make life better in the future for poor, struggling, working people, for the environment, for peace. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to I hope I'm entertaining, I hope I'm informative, but I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear or to reinforce what you believe to be true. But as Kulinski says, he is worried about audience capture. He knows that he's got a sizable number of viewers who are self-described progressive Democrats. And they don't want to hear. They want so badly to believe, like an Arlen Grossman, right? Arlen was a big Bernie supporter. People like, and I'm not in any way, friends of mine, so many friends just like that, want so badly to believe that Kamala's on their side, that the Democrats are on their side. They recognize, as I do, that Jill Stein's a long shot, that if you vote for her, if you support her, you're kind of going out on a limb. You're taking a position that's different from your friends. The New York Times doesn't even mention her name. Your media doesn't view her as a credible person. AOC goes after her. So it's a risk, right? You've got a big audience, Kyle. You got 1.3 million subscribers. It's a big risk. But the reward is so tremendous. You could, forget about me, you and your wife you could be in the vanguard of building a truly progressive movement. But you can't do it. You won't do it. And here's why.
People will just, if they piss their audience off by saying something, they will just almost immediately cuck themselves and fall in line and just start feeding the audience whatever slop they think the audience wants to hear, right? And so this is how you get a situation where so many different podcasts and new media outlets are just flat out wrong on election shit and stop the steal and Trump won. And so you get election misinformation out the wazoo. Nobody even gives a fuck to look at.
All right, so I can't, the cursing just so irritates me. It's just it's cheap. But his point is that the dishonesty that you see in these new media, right, like podcasters like myself, social media, is all driven by right-wing audience capture, right? That they stop the steal and they believe that, and there is some of that, no question. But what about all the phony hoaxes that on the left people believe, like that Donald Trump and Putin were in cahoots, that they conspired together to steal the election? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Or that social media, that a few thousand social media posts completely gulled the American public to vote for Trump in 2016. Or that the Democrats are good on climate change, on the climate crisis. They're not. They're terrible on it. So it's not just one side. has an audience that pushes them in very, very, to contort themselves away from the truth. It's both. And Kulinski's a perfect example of that, also by complete failure to acknowledge it. It's very, very unfortunate. I mean, it's, that's where we are. So that's, another explanation for why progressives seemingly are, have gotten behind Harris. We heard one from Crystal, which is that she's tried just a little bit of honey. She's thrown a little bone, and that's been enough for some. From Kulinski, there's the audience capture explanation, although he attributes that only to conservatives, but obviously that works both ways. There's the audience capture. Let's go to, I think this is, you never hear anything about Stein, but at least from these folks. But you will, we're going to go to Do Dissidents, and I want to play, this is Kshama Sawant, who is, she's not a Democrat. I'm not quite sure what had a party for her, but let's play a little bit of this, and we'll kind of a criticism of, here's Do Dissidents. Let's go to this.
You mentioned all of the colonized people around the world.
Yeah.
Now, what really strikes me watching...
I'm just going to stop this. So this guy, he goes by Chairman Amali Yeshitela, and I think his born name was Joseph Waller or Joseph Wallace, but that's what he's the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. And he's going to explain, I think, a little bit of some of the support for Harris, despite her horrible policies, her pro-war, anti-people policies. So let's hear from Omali Yeshitela.
DNC convention this week, is how much the end point of their identity politics is to use people of the same identity as the colonized people to create the impression that there is no colonization going on, right? They use the melting pot image to cover that over. And in many respects, Kamala strikes me as what they've worked towards for decades. That is the end goal of the identity politics, right? To hide what they're really doing behind an identity that they've conditioned people to idealize. Yeah. As long as you can hide behind that.
So I'm going to stop it there because I really didn't want all that Russell in this. I really wanted to hear Yeshitela, but I guess I started in the wrong spot. Let's go. But he is kind of setting the table, which is that a female of color's face is put on top of an evil set of policies. And this actually does confuse people, sucker people, get them to buy into a candidate anyway who is completely not on their side, who pursues the same horrific policies, the exploitive policies, the anti-poor policies, the anti-people of color policies that the Clintons and the Bushes and what have you, both parties consistently support.
With anti-racism politics, it's not racism. That racism, even the concept, comes from colonialism.
So he's saying, look, it's not about race. He's saying when, yes, corporate Republicans, conservatives use race to divide people and to exploit people and to pit, to justify disparate treatment. But he's saying when so-called progressives or Democrats or liberals use race in the opposite direction, to say this group of people need special treatment, right? Because he's critical of anti-racism, and this group of people should be elevated above others. He's saying that's wrong too. We shouldn't be looking at groups of people by virtue of their race. We shouldn't be identifying that way. We should be saying, no, you're people. You deserve fair treatment regardless of who you are.
to be engaged in that so they can put somebody black. I mean, look at this guy, Lord Austin. You know, he is a chief military guy. He's the head of the Department of Defense. Look at the person who, for the first time in history, they made an African Marine a 4-star general. They got an Air Force Marine African who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The military apparatus of the United States government at this point has a black face. And there's a reason for that, you know, because and like with Obama, you know, African people, men and women, hysterically, you know, overjoyed, and not just Africans, other people too. This is one of the things I really detest about what Obama and Harrison represent, because I truly believe, I always knew what Obama was, and we were first out of the gate saying that, but I truly believe that initially a lot of white people voted for Obama because they thought it was going to be different. They thought that.
All right, I want to stop it there because that spoke so powerfully to me. I absolutely believed in Barack Obama. I absolutely wanted him to be president. I believed that he would be a transformative president in ways that I wanted transformation, and he didn't go there. And maybe part of that was his color. I think it was part of it. I don't think, you know, I think it was, for me, it was more the way he campaigned. I was so glad he took on Hillary because I just absolutely didn't trust her at all, and with good reason. I thought he did campaign to her left. He put together this coalition. Like the chairman is saying, I absolutely believed in President Obama. And what a disappointment he proved to be. Now, I'm not going to say, you know, will I make that same mistake? What I'll say is this. I don't think the Democratic Party, I think it's proven at this point, and that may be different than it was in 2000. I think before Citizens United, was Citizens United over, when was that? Was that actually there was a very, very bad decision in the 1970s. Maybe that was Citizens United. But I think that the party got even worse. Citizens United versus FEC 2010. So before Citizens United, I really do believe there was an opportunity, and I could be completely wrong. This could be my naivete, ingenuousness, that Al Gore could have brought us to a better place. I don't think we would have had the war with Iraq, the war on the people of Iraq. Probably no 9/11. No Abu Ghraib. So, you know, no Patriot Act. So maybe things would have been better. There was still a chance. There was a chance in 2016 with Bernie running as an independent in the Democratic primary. I believe there was a chance. Maybe I was wrong. I think at this point, there's no change. There's no chance. The Democratic Party has proven it's completely impervious to progressive movement. They may, on the edges, give a little bit more in social welfare programs. But when there's a real fight, when push comes to shove between the corporate elites, the donor class to them, and the people, they will always choose the donor class. There may be, again, a little whittling on the edges, some of the hardest edges, the sharpest corners of capitalism, of crony capitalism, will be slightly softer under Democrats. But either way, your wealth, your power, your influence are going to steadily decline under a Democratic administration at this point. I don't think that can change. I don't think the party can change. And that's certainly what the Chairman Oshitela is saying in that piece. But again, what explains Kamala progressive supporters? Well, we've had a few different answers. One, she's tried a little honey. I don't think she has. I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen the sweetness. I guess she smiles a lot. So for some people, that matters, I guess. You heard from Kalinsky, the progressive hosts who have influence, who can move the needle a little bit. Some of them, like him, like a crystal ball. There's audience capture. Their audience to a degree, and especially if you're like a Cenk, right? I mean, Cenk gets money from the TYT people. They get money from Katzenberg and, you know, wealthy Hollywood types. They want to keep that cash flow coming, and they're captured both by their audience and more, you know, by donors. So they're presenting, you know, they're presenting Harris as less toxic, as less noxious than she really is. So I think all of those factor in, but it's so disheartening, it's so disappointing, because we have an opportunity to make things better. We have an opportunity to join together and build a progressive movement, and we've completely failed in doing that. So, you know, I talked yesterday about AOC. There's another example. She actually has some influence. I mean, can you imagine if AOC went out there and said, you know, I'm a Democrat, but this party has failed me, has failed my movement, which it has most certainly done. I mean, there's no question. The policies that, you know, she believes in have no place, or at least she says she believes in, have no place in the Democratic Party. So here's somebody who has some, you know, has a independent base outside of the Democratic Party. She could explain to that base just why Kamala Harris is not an ally. Just why she, like Trump, is going to make things worse. She could start to lead people to a better place. But she won't do it. It's not in her own personal self-interest to do that, and she won't do it. So those are all reasons. Those are all reasons that there are progressives who support Kamala. And it's so sad. And it means yet another opportunity we might have to make things better. And I, you know, again, there's just the demonization of Trump, and he's just so evil, and we have to go in a different direction. So those are all factors. Before we get to actually, I want to see if I can get this another, and I mentioned this, but just to put like kind of a, I guess, a little bow around it. The polarization has gotten so great, right? I mean, the idea that the other side is the embodiment of evil. And it's a binary world. It's either Republican or Democrat. It's not even it's wealthy versus everybody else, which is a much more accurate way of looking at the United States and the world than Republican versus Democrat. But as Edsall points out, what you're seeing is people who didn't particularly like Joe Biden are consolidating around her, and they have a deep animosity towards Republicans and are inherently distrustful of Trump and highly unlikely to switch to allegiance. And the same logic works in reverse. So what really matters in this world is Harris isn't Trump. If that's what matters to you, if what matters to you more than anything else is defeating Trump, well, then of course you're going to vote for Kamala Harris. That's not what matters to me most. What matters to me is we stop supporting genocide. What matters to me is we stop ecocide. What matters to me is we broker peace in Ukraine. And Kamala Harris ain't going to do any of those things. So I ain't going to vote for her. I ain't going to support her. All right, 240-283-7262. I don't know if I'll get to the some other videos. I wanted to play this guy, Rational National, because he really ticked me off. David Dole, another guy with a pretty good sized audience, not as big as Klinsky's, but still pretty big. But let me show, because really the focus is why do progressives support Kamala? This is from a group I actually really like, or at least there are aspects of it I really like. Climate Defiance, they're the ones who stand up to the, go into meetings and confront corporatists, and both Democrats and Republicans. So I got a he says it wasn't a fundraising letter, I guess not, whatever. But touting this meeting with one of her top climate advisors. So she did Harris, to the Harris campaign, a very aggressive, pretty far to the left, anti-climate catastrophe organization, anti-fossil fuels organization. And that's the honey, right? Remember what Crystal Ball said? Just a tiny little bit has made a big difference. And I guess that's true. I mean, this group is really pleased they got to meet with Harris. But I give them a lot of credit. As we go through the slide deck, I just want to show you a few things that were in this fundraising email, which I really appreciated. What Mike Rosenberg said. He's the chairman of the group, and he's done a lot of really impressive work. So I mean, it's impressive what he's done, no question about it. So he's not going to just roll over and wave his paws in the air because he got a meeting with an advisor, although he'll tell us about how great it was. And certainly that he got the meeting at all. And certainly this is a way for the Harris team to reach out to people, even though they've said, hey, I've already said it. I don't support fracking. I'm consistent with my values. I don't support fracking. I support fracking, rather. I already said it. I support fracking. I'm not going to support a fracking ban. I believe in fracking. I've already explained that. She didn't explain why she changed her mind. She didn't explain why she changed her announced position. I have no idea if she changed her mind, but she doesn't explain why she changed her announced position. Obviously, it was for political reasons, probably a mixture of two things. Corporate donations, or donations from corporatists who support drilling. Drill, 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 baby, drill. And also because labor, there's a sizable number of labor voters who do depend on the toxic stuff for a living. And she's certainly not prepared to have a transformative presidency where we move away forcibly from fossil fuels while guaranteeing workers in that industry a decent quality of life. She would never do that. So her only alternative for those employees is to say, oh yeah, we'll drill. Don't worry. We're going to drill. We're going to inject all that fresh water deep into the ground. We're going to taint the water. We're going to waste it. We're going to frack. And we're going to not only just use up a lot of fresh water to pump, to break up the rock chambers where the natural gas is, but we're also going to likely destroy a lot of aquifers and other fresh water. And even though we're running out of fresh water, so what? She's not going to do that because the alternative would mean embracing a different kind of economy. She would never do that. It would, where she is, who she is, her grain, and who supports her candidacy. And by the way, if she were somebody who would transform the economy into one that works for poor, struggling, and working people, that guarantees everyone has enough and nobody has too much, if that were Kamala Harris, she wouldn't be the nominee. She'd be Bernie Sanders in 2016, who didn't get the nomination, even though he was the best candidate and would have won the general election. So the climate defiance guy, I didn't get all the answers when I spoke to her team. She didn't say whether she'll forcefully oppose fossil fuel subsidies. She didn't say Kirby didn't say whether she'll make climate a more central issue in her messaging. There's a lot that we're still waiting here. All right. Don't believe a word see, this is the problem I have. Of course you're going to want to meet with a candidate, but don't ever confuse access with influence. You got a tiny taste of a meeting with an advisor. It feels really good. You're like, oh my God, I'm making a difference. Kamala Harris has already shown us exactly who she is. She ain't gonna stop drilling. She might throw a few subsidies to the clean green energy industries, but she's not going to reduce our consumption of fossil fuels. And therefore, She's not going to stop ecocide. What's really disappointing to me about all of this is, and I appreciate this. I was polite, but I was firm. No sends ended with no worries or not. In other words, he's not promising that he'll support Kamala, as far as I know. Although this group did push hard to get Biden out, and was, at least in their emails, very pleased when he was out and Kamala was replaced him, despite the fact that she's never demonstrated any. She did a little bit, to be fair. She did prosecute. She went after some of the fossil fuel companies in California, which I think was good. So yeah, I'll give her a little credit for that. But I also was politically, it gave her some political cover for her otherwise pretty conservative, pretty corporatist record. And it was in California, where she could get away with it to a degree. So the fundraiser, the emailer, is correct. It is life or death. This is a life or death issue. It's not life or death, though. He shouldn't say climate change cannot be a back burner issue, checked off on a laundry list between dental care and data security. This is life or death for us. It's life or death, period. It's life or death for the planet, for the biosphere, period. And then I agree with this. If we are to expect bold climate action, we need a candidate who will run on it right now. Agreed. There is a candidate who's running on it right now. There is. Her name is Jill Stein. I don't know why you wouldn't vote for her, why you wouldn't support her. It seems so clear that's the right answer. When the candidate whose environmental policy advisor you met with has made it very clear she's not going to rein in the fossil fuel industry. She's not going to take steps to reduce our consumption of toxic energy. So I don't know she's powerful. She's going to probably win. She's ahead in the polls. But she's not going to do what we want. And because of that, I don't get it. Why even enter, she's clearly not on the side of the planet, of life. So nothing that explains this, that explains progressive support for her, justifies it. It explains it. She's a woman of color. We've never had one president before. She isn't Donald Trump. She's shown a little bit more, perhaps arguably more generosity of spirit to progressives than Hillary did. How does any of that translate into better policy? It doesn't. So all I'm left with again is we're in a bad place. We're rushing headlong to disaster. And neither of the duopoly candidates will do anything to avert it. Seems to me the answer is clear. Seems to me you vote for somebody who's going to make things different, who's going to change, who's going to pursue change. And that ain't Kamala Harris. And to the extent it might be Donald Trump, his change would, in many ways, will be for the worse. You got to vote for Jill Stein. It's the only answer.